Welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today as we deliberate on submissions on our public transport plan as the principal item of business. We are, however, privileged to have in our midst a deputation from a group of people passionately interested in the future of rail in this region and more broadly. Before we get into all of that, I would invite, and I'm not putting you on the spot, Api, to whakatau us into this mahi through a opening karakia. You could settle us into our work.
Martin. Please join us with our usual council karakia, whakataka tahau. Nā reira. Whakataka tahau ki te uru, whakataka tahau ki te tonga,
Kia mā, kina ki uta,
kia mā tātaka tai, he ia ki ana te atukura, he tio, he huka,
he hau, tihe, mau.
Nā reira, ko te amorangi ki mua ko te hapai o ki muri, te turutanga mahi pono te Māori mana mo te hake. Nā reira, he mihi tuatahi māku ki te rungarawa, nāna nei ngā me katoa I hanga. Nā reira, I ngā mate me ngā tini ai tua o ngā marae kārangatanga maha, ka mihi a ka tangihia tātou I tēnei wā. Nā reira, apeti hono tātai hono, rātou te hongo maki a rātou, moi mai rā, moi mai rā. Apeti hono tātai hono, tātou te kanohi ora ki a tātou, ko hui mai nei, a tēnā koutou, huri no, a kia ora tātou katoa. Nā reira, nau mai, hare mai koutou ki tō tātou nei hui, he runga te kaupapa o tēnei rangi. Nā reira, he te tia mana, Martin, ka nui te mihi ki a koe, o tō kā, mo tō mahi mo tō hake, ki tēnei kimiti o tātou. Nā reira, ka nui te mihi ki a koe, huri no, at the fire, Linda, ka nui te mihi, te tūmaki hoki o te rōpū waka kūtahi, ka nui te mihi ki a koe. Me ngā member o tēnā Kauni Hera, o tēnei rohe o te matau o Māui, mai te wairo, Craig Mā, tēnā koe he te rangatira, o wairo ho pupu ho ninginei mā tangi rau, mai ki te tamate araki nui, te whānau nei o Waipukurau, Waipāwa, ka nui te mihi ki a koe e te whae hoki. Hoki mai ki tēnei pai whenua o te heratanga Kauni Hera hoki, ka nui te mihi ki a koutou, ko tai mai, me tō mātou nei ki tēnei tai whenua, Kauni Hera, a rohe o Ahuriri, Keith Mā, tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai, haere mai. E ngā kai mahi. Bryce, Russell, Katrina, ka nui te mihi kia koutou. Runga te kaupapa o te rangi nei, nā reira, ka rero, taku kōrero I tēnei wā, huri no, tēnā koutou, a kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Api, for your warm and inclusive mihi to all of us. Ka nui te mihi ki a koe hoki. Before we get into, the business of the day, just a bit of housekeeping. The meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page and recorded for later viewing on your YouTube channel. In the event of an earthquake, drop, cover and hold, and if the shaking is long or strong, when it subsides, we exit through the nearest exit and proceed along Dalton Street up through Tiffin Park to Cameron Road. If there's an alarm that sounds, immediately evacuate the building through the exit signs that you can see displayed there. And the wharepaku, as you know, out through the door there to the right. We have apologies today from from Mayor Little, and we've got Jeremy Harker here instead. Welcome, Jeremy, from Whitehall, so thank you very much for being in our midst. Ka nui te mihi ki a koe hoki.
Kia ora.
We have apologies also from Nick Ganavit, Port of Napier. And instead of David Murray, welcome Craig. Thank you for being with us representing the Automobile Association. And we have apologies from Angela. Just on that, can I just say how disturbed I was to hear of the, I guess, public reaction to some of the enforcement work that the police were doing on State Highway 5 over the long weekend. I just think it's appalling, and we should condemn that in the strongest possible terms as leaders of the transport sector in Hawke's Bay. Those people are out there on, a public holiday trying to keep people safe and save lives. The speed limit has been increased, and yet they get flack for doing their job. And I just think, as I say, I think that is appalling, and we should acknowledge their work and state our views about that in the strongest possible terms. So just wanted to mention that, slightly digressing from the apology, but I guess apologies on behalf of our communities to Angela and her team at the police for having to put up with that. Any conflict of interest declarations?
Oh, just one other apology is Robin Malley. He's
Oh, okay, thank you.
unavailable today.
Well, look, I guess we better move that the, before we get into conflicts, move that those apologies be received.
And Tanya Kerr.
Okay, and Tony Kerr. Is there anyone here? I can see you all around the table, so thank you for being here, those who can make it. So move those apologies. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Taylor, thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? It's carried. Any conflict of interest declarations?
I probably need to raise one that obviously in my other role up here in Warra, I'm the CEO of QRS, Quality Roading and Services, so I have a significant interest in roading. So I'll just manage that if anything comes through.
Kia ora, Jeremy. Thank you. The first matter of business is the confirmation of the 16 May minutes. Has anyone had an opportunity to read those and is willing to move that they're a true and correct record of the meeting? If not, I will. Councillor Butto, just in time. I'll second that. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against?
Not against.
Yeah,
I just
comment?
want to mention that it's noted that I left the meeting, but I was coming in and out as reception allowed. I was travelling.
Yes.
But I just wanted submitters to know that I have watched the meeting back online for the end of it that I missed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we need to note that, or perhaps we just note that that's part of this meeting's record?
Thank you.
Thank you. So did I put that motion? We did. Okay. All right. Thank you. Goldfish brain. Now, a great opportunity to welcome Neil Robertson, who's online, and Guy Wellwood. Guy, if you'd like to come up to the table. I met with Neil and Guy and Graham Carroll last Friday just to talk about issues confronting rail investment and planning, and what they would like from us as a committee to, I guess, put some steel behind the backing of rail in a regional context and as a regional sector for the future of that transport option in this region and beyond. So I'm not going to steal any more of their thunder other than just to say thank you for taking the time to put a presentation together and for being with us. The floor is yours, and you have, we've given you 20 minutes, so let's see if we can get this through until about 10:30.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to members of this very important committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. My subject is the same as always. I've spoken on many occasions to this committee, the promotion of rail transport in Hawke's Bay. I'm joined at a distance by my friend Neil Robertson, one of the most respected rail promoters in the country. He has a PowerPoint presentation organised on the work needed to get the Napier to Gisborne line reopened. Mr. Chairman, I pay a tribute to you and note your pending retirement from the Regional Council. I thank you for your past consideration of rail and your kindness to amateurs like Neil and myself.
Thank you.
We do know that the Regional Council, the councillors and the staff are exhausted and traumatised by the events of Cyclone Gabriel. We're not here asking for money just moral support, and we want rail to be in your vision for the future. Every other country in the developed world is building up its rail system. New Zealand, for some odd reason, lags behind, and we've concentrated on big roading projects. An exception has been the very expensive City Rail Link project in Auckland, but that is going to be a name change, a game changer that will transform Auckland for the better, and people around New Zealand are then going to ask, why can we not have better rail communication in our regions? Just this week, well after our presentation was organised, the Victoria Transport Policy Institute in Australia, and we need a similar body in New Zealand, issued a new report called Mobility Productivity Paradox. And this is the finding. We have reached saturation on the roads, and now economic productivity tends to decline when motor vehicle travel increases. I can provide a copy of that report to the committee. Why, for instance, are we spending $900 million on putting more lanes on our expressway? We all know the answer. Votes for the National Party. We're certainly not protecting the environment or meeting climate change obligations. And now the evidence is that we're not helping the economy. We can understand the role of Kiwi Rail. They are doing their best, even in this region. And David Hedefin is a good Hawke's Bay boy. Kiwi Rail are charged with the policies of a government that does not believe strongly in rail. The east coast of the North Island is not that important to them. This is why we need the Regional Council and the Regional Transport Committee to speak up for us. As I've said on previous occasions, we should regard the very large region of Gisborne as an opportunity so that Gisborne looks south to us, not north to the Golden Triangle. New opportunities are opening up with rail to Gisborne. The new chair of Kiwi Rail, Sue Tyndall, has an infrastructure background. And Paul Silk is not only the acting CEO of Ferry Holdings, developing rail-capable ferries, but he has important governance roles within Tairāwhiti. If New Zealand is to get out of its economic mess and heavy debt, then the productive output of the East Coast is surely crucial. I may have a little more to say after Neil's presentation, but could I just conclude at this stage by saying we rail people support roads because people live and work on roads. But the best way to support roads and maintain them is to fully utilise our rail network. And now I pass over to my friend Neil behind me. Ready to go?
Are you on mute, Neil?
Yep.
We can't hear you. Looks to me like he's muted by the little icon on the screen.
Yeah, he needs to unmute himself.
Unmute, Neil.
Let's do it himself.
Reckons he has. Here we go. Still can't hear you, Neil. Can't hear a thing you're saying, unfortunately. That's it.
Kia ora tātou.
Hello.
Lovely. Yeah, nice of you all to welcome me to a talk on this the very important subject here today. Just before I go on, have we got the on-screen PowerPoint running? Is it up there on your screen?
I thought he was presenting it.
We were asking that you shared that, Neil?
Oh, I can't do that from here. Okay, I'll talk to it. Firstly, I want to say that the This is not an anti-road plea at all, although it may sound that at times. But road will always do something like 60% of the freight task. Rail should be doing 30 to 40% of the freight task, but it's only doing about 12% at the moment. Okay, so the first slide actually says that Napier Gisborne is economical because 2 private companies continue to use it.
That slide's coming up now, Neil, just so you know.
Sorry?
We've got the slide up now.
Oh, lovely.
Yep.
Good. Okay, so you've got that. Okay, so 2 private companies continue to use it. That was private companies. And those companies were hauling quite considerable tonnages, and at the moment there will be about 150,000 tonnes per annum. And in 2030, it's projected to go to 210,000 tonnes. That's quite significant, but there's a new mill at Gisborne run by the Mallory Group, and their estimates mean that it could actually double up there. So that's quite significant. The area is growing, and there's more produce coming through there from the growers, and produce is now being grown in the Wairoa district as well. And the foresters use rail. So there we are. There's a slide there which says next one, Tansrail and Trollrail used it. And we haven't even discussed the scenic beauty of up there and the tourism capabilities. Okay, next slide is basically that line doesn't fit KiwiRail's business plan. And they continue to run a limited product railway, which must be in a container or palletised, or be a 1 million plus contract per annum. And the resources, their resources, they would prefer to concentrate on the most profitable routes like the Golden Triangle. Next slide, please. And this is the area where they have these long trains with containers on board. Next slide, thanks. And on the main trunk, you can see they have palletised wagons, curtain-sided wagons for pallets. And next slide. And they'd also have bulk trains, coal, that's Genesis coal going to the Huntly Power Station, and log traffic. But it has to be, any contract has to be over $1 million a year. Okay, so I'll just move quickly to the next slide. And this was in your strategic plan, and it read that rail has served forestry, but competitive environment made this service unsustainable. That's actually not actually true. For a long time, KiwiRail actually matched the truckers at $14 a tonne. And then they just suddenly put the price up to $23 a tonne. I asked them why they did that, and they said it was because a stevedoring company had increased charges, and they had to pass them on.
Oh, sorry.
You've gone back to mute, Neil.
Yeah, so anyway, KiwiRail really obfuscated as to why they actually increased that charge, and one has to really question why. But it does actually bring up an important point, and if we can go to the next slide, please. It can be, the regional rail is profitable. For KiwiRail, they wouldn't look at it because they'd rather use their resources in the Golden Triangle. But a smaller operator would actually have a look at the area and say, yes, I could make a living out of this under certain circumstances, which I'll talk to in a minute. So the below wheel infrastructure needs separation from the above rail business. That's for a start. And then open access into the railway area. Funding needs to be on a par with the road transport industry at a level playing field. And vehicles over 3.5 tonnes get an 86% subsidy. This is true. This is on 2023 figures from NZTA, and yet they do 93% of the road damage. That means that they only pay 14% of the costs of building and maintaining roads. That's all that the road user charges for vehicles over 3.5 tonnes generates. They're involved in 20% of all road fatalities and other deaths by air pollution. Next one, please. Gisborne Line actually did have quite a lot of container traffic and bulk traffic, and it was used quite well. And in that second photo there, that's a Wairoa log train, which took 25 trucks off the road. And I just want to sort of emphasise these are the pluses of rail. They're actually negatives for road transport. Road safety, road congestion, road pollution, and road pollution is an important one. It's not just the CO2 emissions and it's not just the nitrogen emissions from the exhaust. Studies now show that about 1,800 times more actually comes from the tyres and from road dust. Tyres actually do shed a lot of microplastics, which are really very, very polluting. But there's all sorts of other dirty things that are on the road that get kicked up and cause a particulate air particulate pollution, and that actually causes something like about 13,000 admissions to hospital for asthma each year. So it's also a smaller land footprint, and it's best for exporters because it provides a smaller carbon footprint. We really need to be serious about how we export our goods and how we actually get our carbon footprint down, because we don't want to become a pariah. We're far enough away from our customers as it is. We need to actually make sure that we can do it in the using the least amount of CO2 as possible, and it provides customer choice, which they like. The total, this is from the Chris McKenzie study, and it was sort of worked out then roughly $80 million. You can see down below it's gone up to about 100, and 68 to 80 from Napier to Wairau. Those figures are roughly. KiwiRail actually have got an estimate of between 400 to 600, but KiwiRail actually gold plate everything, and that's not actually required. And this is from the Fraser Geonet people, whatever they call themselves. And it's a very, very practical study, and it shows that the money, and that compares well with the $425 million for a 4-kilometre deviation and a 160-metre bridge. So this is it generally. That's your road there from Napier to Gisborne. That's State Highway 2. That's what it can look like at times. And so it's safer, congested, less wear and tear, fewer CO2. And which mode would you choose? That's actually the same bridge when we were actually, rail was carting logs from Wairau, and there's the truck at the bottom of it. And I actually kind of know the driver of the truck actually. But yeah, so what the key points here are, if we can go back to one of the slides here, is that trucks will always have the just go back to rail is profitable. That's back. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Trucks actually get a phenomenal subsidy, and rail doesn't get that. So what happens is you get an imbalance between the funding of rail infrastructure and the funding of the roading infrastructure. In KiwiRail, it's actually vertically integrated. So it means that KiwiRail kind of have to look at it as a business and say, how profitable is this to us? Whereas the truckers don't. I mean, so most of State Highway 2's problems are actually funded by money that's actually gathered from the Southern Motorway in Auckland through your road user charges, and it's mostly from motorists, so people driving cars. So the truckers don't actually really have to worry too much about that. So they can charge $14 a tonne, and away they go, and they pay the road user charges the same as everybody else does. Whereas rail, it's actually a different kettle of fish. So there is a move at the moment to look at separating the below wheel infrastructure from rail and placing that under NZTA or maybe a separate body. But anyway, everything gets funded through the New Zealand Transport Fund, and gets smoothed out so that we actually get a fairer and an even playing field between road and rail, and we can actually get the best out of our assets, because your railway to Gisborne is a phenomenal asset to your region, and it needs to be treasured and it needs to be looked after. And at the moment it's not. It's been vandalised and it's been neglected, and I would like to reverse that. And there's a lot of export freight that's coming from the region that really needs to be going by rail for New Zealand's reputation, for safety, for CO2 levels, for particulate pollution, all of those things. It's a better way of transporting the stuff, and we need to be looking at it very seriously. So what I'm asking for here is that the local bodies in this region become the champions for rail. You actually advocate for it the whole way through. I'm very, very disturbed that there is a view at the moment with the Hawke's Bay Regional Council that the line is unprofitable or the line is uneconomical. It's not. The road is just as uneconomical. It's just the system of funding that is yet to be changed. And if that is changed, then we'll get the best out of everything. Thank you very much. I think that's about all. We'll take questions now, I suppose.
Do you want to wrap that up?
I'm conscious of time. I just wanted to say there's also a strong argument for south-north transport, in other words, Napier to Gisborne. I mean, obviously Gisborne, being a smaller city than Hastings or Napier, would benefit from product from this end or from further. And also, there is a possibility in the future that logs might travel north rather than south and be processed by these two big processing works in Gisborne that are due to increase over the next few years. But that's all I want to add, and we're open for questions.
Okay, well, look, we're close to the time limit, but I'm in the committee's hands. I'm able to allow time for questions. We can't debate the matter in the deputation. You may wish to reflect or respond, either Daniel or Ian, in your verbal advisory reports, and we might decide where we might take this deputation later in the meeting as well. So we're not going to get into that sort of substantive discussion now, but I think the message has been very well received. You're asking us to champion rail and for a level playing field and looking at investment across the road and rail network to the overall greater benefit of the transport system as a whole. Any questions? I'll allow two. Daniel's got a question. I thought you might have had a question for Daniel. Anyway, Daniel, where you go?
Happy to take questions, but look, it's not a question, it's an offer. So I've met with various groups on Wairoa to Gisborne over the years, and also Napier to Wairoa. So I'd be happy to have a separate meeting on that if people are after some more information. At the moment, there is no decision on Napier to Wairoa, but the decision on Wairoa to Gisborne is unchanged of it staying a mothballed line. And I've worked through previously, you mentioned Fraser, worked through with him and others that have sought some more information there. So happy to make that offer to the deputation that's with the committee today.
Thank you very much.
When you said comments later, I'm unsure if I'll be able to stay for later. I have something after 11. I can just make some comment. I know you don't want a debate here, but
We'll allow that a brief comment rather than debate, but yes.
Yeah, look, QL is, and I think, most of the transport industry is, would support and be grateful for advocacy for rail. So thank you for putting this forward. We would also note that that the line between Palmerston North and Napier is still open, and we would encourage advocacy and support for that section. The line north is not operational, and I'd like to make the point that the advocacy that councils, including some from this group, made with the taking logging trucks off the Gentle Annie and putting them onto the rail between Central North Island to Port of Napier, that was really gratefully received. And I just would request more focus on the operational parts of our rail network, and that section of the line has capacity, and there's the ability for more freight to go out there. And just as I said in the two committee meetings where that section was discussed, I don't believe that came at any cost to the ratepayers of the councils involved. And so I think everyone thought that was a super positive piece. So just we welcome the advocacy and support, and would request that it focuses also and more south of Napier.
Thank you, Daniel. I think the two gentlemen here are also interested in the latest estimate of the cost of repair of Napier to Wairoa. I don't know if you've got that at your fingertips.
No, I'm able to say it's in the hundreds of millions, but I can't discuss that anymore. There's still some commercially sensitive discussions going on with the stakeholders involved. But I can, and the offer is there, as I've done with this committee and with other stakeholders, do a separate session to go through the scale of the damage between Napier to Wairoa. I believe it's not well recognised.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very much to Neil and Guy, again, for taking the time to share your passion with us on a very important issue for our transport network in the region. All right. We now need to move to the Regional Public Transport Plan. And look, we've got a really comprehensive, and can I say, I just commend the staff, you have done an extremely good job, absolutely stellar job, I think, because I reread all the submissions of summarising all of the real key points that have come out in those submissions into those themes, and then sort of particularising each theme for each of the questions, and it was really, really helpful. I also think you've done a great job. I mean, you can't answer every single point in detail, but proposing recommendations for how what we've heard can actually be responded to. So I just wanted to commend you all for that. I don't think you need to take us through it in detail. We all would have read it. But I'm in your hands as to what you would like to provide by way of an overview verbally here at the meeting today, any particular points you'd like to highlight, and then we'll go to questions and discussion. Thank you.
Hopefully everyone can hear me all right. Firstly, thank you to the chair and the committee for that feedback. It's really positive, and it's nice to know that the work has landed well, which is really cool. So just in terms of the paper and the recommendations, I think it's safe to say we can take it all as read. I think from my point of view, and then I'll hand over to Russell for his thoughts. In terms of broad observations around what we heard through the submissions, through the engagements that we had during the consultation period, and all of the other conversations and such forth that have happened around this, some very key themes have come up. There's been a couple of, I guess, unknowns that have come out of the woodwork. For example, the potential for a service through Omahu via Korokipo Road to EIT. That's something that wasn't previously on the radar, and now it is, and it can be looked at, which is great. We've seen that community transport has come through quite strongly from a range of different bodies and communities, and so that's something that we would quite like to pursue. It does present a pretty good opportunity for our region in terms of access and services. We felt that a lot of what we already knew was reconfirmed. So by that I mean there's a clear appetite for more frequency and extended operating hours, and you know, people seem willing to compromise on those, whereby maybe if the frequency was just on a few key routes, for example, that was enhanced in the first instance, or if we were able to extend operating hours on, say, a Friday and Saturday to allow people to have, you know, a meal in town or whatever, that would be looked upon favourably, and in some instances more favourably than a sweeping across the board increase in frequency and operating hours. So there's flex, and there's an appreciation of the potential of the service and the long-term path that we're now on. The Central Hawke's Bay came through very, very strongly again. There is a significant appetite for that trial service, and as with the draft RPT and in the recommendations, you'll see that we reconfirm that, and in fact look to boost that in importance. We will soon be starting in earnest on the 27 to 30 RLTP, where we will try and secure some NZTA funding for that again. That isn't going to stop us from trying to find some more NZTA funding in the short term, but those are conversations yet to be had. But I think the funding envelope for public transport probably is what it is until the NLTP is up. We've also seen extremely strong support for the airport service and the sports park as well on the new network. And importantly, one of the things that came through very, very strongly for me was a need, or I guess an ask from the community for ongoing engagement and conversation around the final design of the network. But more importantly, it's on their radar now, and so it's down to us to keep it on their radar as we move towards implementation of the network. That's going to be particularly important, just to make sure that people are at least aware that there is network change coming when we finally land on the date for that. So those were the key highlights from me, and hopefully we articulated those well enough in the deliberations report. I think it's safe to say we're pretty well on the right track with where we're headed with this PT plan, and people understand it's going to take some time to achieve our vision, but I think we've got the community support, which is great.
And if I can just briefly add, I think all the committee appreciates that Bryce has put a significant amount of work into this, and he is driven. We've gone out to the community. We continue to go out to the community to consult on all parts of the plan. We're now focusing on getting the routes exactly right, and we carry on that engagement so that by August we can have things nailed down to bring back where we've got to this committee in your final meeting this year. So it's been a lot of work and a lot of commendation to Bryce for that.
Thank you, Russ. I actually think you need to share in that commendation. To be honest, you've been a duo, a dynamic duo. So, yeah, look, with what you've had to work with, it's quite extraordinary, actually. So, again, thank you for that. Any questions on the report before we go around the room and perhaps discuss our thoughts by way of deliberations and the recommendations in the report? So this is just the questions rather than the discussion. Clear on that? All right. It sounds like it's very clear to everyone. I think I might have had one or two questions, not many.
I have questions, Mr. Chair, but I think they also come in as comments, so I'm just unsure whether to ask them now or...
Well, if it's a question where it's something you don't know and or you want clarified, ask it now. If you want to discuss...
Okay, well, I have a couple then, Mr. Chair.
Go for it.
Just with regards if HBRC was to employ a community transport lead, I would want assurance that CHB and Wairoa would be adequately covered. And if so, would that general rate cover the whole region, and hence CHB and Wairoa would be covered by that person?
Through you, Chair, the initial thinking, and I stress that initial thinking part because we haven't delved into the detail of what that would look like. But in theory, and using the Waikato model as probably what we would look to adopt, if the regional council were to levy a general rate for a community transport fund and the community transport lead was part of that, by virtue of doing so, it would be a regional scheme, and that service would, or that person would cover the whole region. Some initial thoughts on how that scheme might work is it could potentially be a contestable fund where we would, open that pool up for opportunities, say, hey, look, there's X amount of dollars here, this is community transport, this is how it functions, send us a proposal, and those would be evaluated potentially by this committee or by a range of priorities or something that were decided and agreed upon. So for all intents and purposes, yes, it would be a regional entity.
The other question may well end up being a rhetorical one. We've increased services to Mitre 10 Sports Park and possibly even more increases. Have you considered at all and I'm unsure about the Wairoa case here, but all the CHB users hiring buses and travelling up to Mitre 10 Sports Park, have you considered that in your thinking?
Sorry, through you, Chair, just for clarity, do you mean sort of like on a Monday to Friday or a weekend sort of basis?
Weekend probably, or I'm unsure of the usage of the park, but I know that there are a lot that.
There's a lot of people. No, that's not something that we've actively considered, but makes perfect sense. And if I remember correctly, the sports park had suggested in their submission that there could be a potential future opportunity, particularly for the weekends, to utilise or to leverage underutilised capacity, i.e. buses sitting in the depot, to have a sort of hub and spoke type model at the sports park. So I think that's certainly something that we can actively start looking at and pricing up as well, because of course it will come down to the bottom dollar. Now, in the CHB example, that's not to say that can't happen sooner rather than later. We would just have to find a suitable funding model to enable that, because it may not be that it's within our funding envelope to enable, but perhaps, and this is just waxing lyrical, but perhaps, it would be reasonably affordable. You could get a group or groups together. We would say it'd be this much. And that would be that. Then we could make it happen. Don't know, but, it's worth investigating in more detail.
Councillor Price.
Just a question in relation to a bus stop, inclusion of a bus stop into the routes that are on the map. It came up in our annual plan in Church Road, on the corner of White Street, to allow a short walk to the library, the Taradale Library. So is this an opportune time to mention that?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm assuming that this is for the planned routes, not the current ones?
Yes, planned route.
Yep. Yeah, then it's absolutely perfect time, well ahead of when we would need to be thinking about that. So, yeah, it's on the radar now, and then that's a conversation with the Napier City Council transport team, and we can make it happen.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question, can I just bounce, before I go to you, Councillor Butto, bounce a question off in relation to the Central Hawke's Bay issue that Councillor Taylor raised? Twofold, and part of it's down a rabbit hole, but if we were to run the commuter service up from Central Hawke's Bay, it would likely terminate, say, next to the library in Hastings, and someone could get on the number 1 service then and go to the sports park, right?
Correct.
And as I understand it, that service would run every hour on Saturdays and public holidays, right?
The number 1 service?
Yes.
Correct.
The rabbit hole is this, that the plan says for a number of these new routes, including number 2, that they would run at their current level of service. A new route can't run at a current level of service. So do you need to sort of then read that against the table, which is later on? Is that translated the current level of service for the equivalent route into a more detailed formula?
Correct.
Yeah, right. So you need to read the two together. Okay. Yeah, okay. So we don't need to change anything to, you could say bracket, refer table, whatever, I suppose. It might be a way to do that. Refer table X, okay. Councillor Butto first, then I'll come back to you.
Question on the cash payments. Was wondering about the idea of going for an automatic, essentially after 3 months of less than 5%, cash payments get removed versus having another decision gate in there for the committee to consider. You've gone with the automatic one. Why is that?
I guess through the chair, the idea is that at a point 5% or below, the cost of actually running the cash system becomes almost as much as the cost of the fares received. So it's a point where you actually say it's actually costing us more to do it. We might as well give it away, so to speak. So that's just that number. Again, we could change that and bring it back to the committee. We could certainly indicate to the committee that we're about to approach that point in time. and we could certainly report on it, how we're going.
Through you, Chair, before we made any changes, of course, we would let the committee know. But as Russell says, that's the calculation. The calculations I've done is that's the point that it becomes. So we would communicate that beforehand.
Councillor Taylor, back to you.
Yeah, it's total mobility section. 58.5 says limited availability or awareness of total mobility in outlying areas such as CHB. What have you considered, given that CHB is now included in the rate for that? What, if any, promotion or publicity of total mobility is there likely to be in Central Hawke's Bay to boost that service?
I can answer that. The first thing is that we do actually make sure that all the assessing agencies and typically all the medical professions know about total mobility. What our problem is that we're right on a ceiling of how much funding we have available for total mobility. So we're very careful in the words of promoting and education, because one encourages a lot of use and the other one makes sure people know it's available. So we're just walking a tight line at the moment of what we can actually reasonably promote.
It's interesting, Councillor Taylor, this very issue and the fact that we're now rating for it has tipped a lot of people off, and they're going, well, I didn't know we had that. And Councillor Foley's brought that to our attention. So in some respect, we've been doing some education through this very process, but it's a valid point.
Through the chair, in the public transport total mobility report, you'll see later, you'll see month versus month, we've still got quite significant increases in usage, which is concerning.
Concerning financially.
Yes.
That.
Just two questions about the cashless service. I guess one is, do you expect with the new ticketing system to be a change in it? And then two, is people going to be made aware if there is a objective indicator of when you're going to change to a cashless system, like ahead of time, so people will know what the metric is and they might adjust their habits ahead of time?
Sure. So the premise of the national ticketing system is that we are trying to make it as easy as possible for anybody to get on the bus and catch and pay their fare. So we've widened the number of types of payment from credit cards, debit cards, still have a national transit card, which is called Motomove. And once we get to the point of such a wide variety of ways people can pay, can have auto top-ups on their cards, etc., we would fully expect a move away from cash. So it's a strong promotional push onto these alternative payment methods, but not cutting out cash until such time as everybody's caught on to the benefits.
Councillor Price.
My way. Clearly, well done and explained why it's not affordable. How do we keep it so it just stays in the loop so that if it does become funding? I think it's something you've mentioned, Mark.
I've got an idea about that, which I'll be raising.
Okay, so I just don't want it to...
Yeah. We'll put that in the comments and discussion.
Okay.
And if your question is, did the staff have any information or advice on how we might do that?
Yeah, that's what I was sort of...
Yeah.
It just, after today, it's not wiped out.
Yeah.
So through you, Chair, if you'll recall, Councillor Price, in I think it's 2, possibly 3 places within the plan, we put some form of on-demand firmly on the radar, subject to funding. So from a funding potential perspective, if it's in the RPTP, then it's open to funding should the NLTF and the local share match at some point. So it's there, it's on the radar. We can make it happen if we can attract the necessary funding to support that service. The other comment, I guess, and it's probably a conceptual thought at this time, is if we think about community transport, that may have the opportunity to offset some of those access requirements for certain communities or certain members of our communities. And I think back, for example, to the positive ageing presentation and submission, they discussed, or they set out that they would like greater service footprint in areas with higher proportions of elderly or those with that were, what was the phrase? I can't think of it right now, but a service such as that would create that access, and there's nothing to stop a community transport service acting as a hub and spoke type service for public transport or anything it so chooses. So there's that firm option there, which again, if we get that funding on the radar and the LTP, is something that we could probably implement reasonably swiftly.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions. First one is, there are quite a lot of what about my street submissions, and that's always a challenge when you're going to a deliberately bi-directional, frequency over coverage model. But the two standouts were kind of Taradale and Pakowhai Road. Now, the paper says at paragraph 27, the table says Pakowhai Road remains serviced. Is that really correct when it was now when it's serviced right along the length of it? I mean, explain to me to what extent Pakowhai Road remains serviced.
So, Mr. Chair, I can answer it in two parts. The first part is that it has a new dedicated service. We may call it a connector or an orbiter or something like that. That's an internal circulatory system in Hastings that we are just finishing our consulting on. And we think about that. The other part too is that we also recognise that there is a distinct number of people from Pakowhai Road wanting to travel to Napier. So we're looking at what we can do in addition to Route 1 to provide that service, probably only at peak times, but still to provide it.
So the Route 1 would, the service that would be left for Pakowhai Road would be on the corner of Pakowhai Road, Norekakaho Road and Omahu Road, right?
Sorry, just to add a bit more clarity to that, Chair, living in that area, I'm reasonably familiar with it. So right now, the 12 goes down Pakowhai Road, up Evendon onto the expressway. So the current plan is that it would go down Pakowhai, down Frederick Street, and then Tomoana. So that's the vast majority of Pakowhai, and it would be the only lost stop would be
Evendon.
The one outside Bare Knuckle Barbecue. But those people there, they can still, and again, keeping in mind we're going bi-directional, so they can hop on one side of the road, catch a bus to the airport, to the hospital, and then they're directly on that trunk route. But like Russell said, what we are looking at is some form of service generally along the same route as the 12 currently takes, possibly going all the way down Pakowhai Road through Pakowhai, maybe, just in peak times to have that option there for those people who do rely on that.
Yeah.
So they don't have to necessarily catch two buses.
Okay. What else did I have? Look, a lot of people ask questions about how you'd top up on the national ticketing system and whether you'd be able to wave your wand and use EFTPOS and how easy it would be, and people saying, I might not have a lump of cash at any one time to do that, $20, I might have two that'll pay I can't sort of top up. What's the point of topping up $2 and it's only going to pay for that route? So how easy will that national ticketing system be for people to top up? Will they have to come into the council office here? Will they, how do you do it?
Okay, if I can explain that. So if we just put aside that you could pay with a debit or credit card or your watch or whatever you've got.
So you could?
So you will definitely be able to use all of those on the bus.
On the bus.
But let's just say we've got someone who doesn't have a credit or debit card, a 10-year-old, for instance, which is reasonable to expect they wouldn't. They will have what's called a Motu Move card, or will replace the B card, that can be topped up at a range of retailers. So the same way you might have gone and topped up your phone card or whatever. So there'll be 13, 15 of those. Of course, we'll have the council office as well. But we won't be, obviously, long-term topping up on the bus. We want to get the cash off the bus. The other way, of course, is that parents can, if they're talking about children, top it up online.
So you can top it up online, at a retail outlet, at the office here, or wave your wand when you get on the bus with your standard debit or credit card. Okay. Yep. Okay, now those, I think, were my questions. I have got some sort of comments around some of the deliberations and recommendations, which I will come to. Any other questions for Bryce or Russell? Okay, what I'd like to do now is go around the table, starting with Api, for any discussion, reflections on what we've heard in submissions, read in submissions, seen in the report, with any changes we'd want to the recommendations, those sorts of things. Now's your chance. And we'll see where we end up after that. Start with you, Api.
Yeah, kia ora tātou. Over the years, I've noticed when we review and talk about the regional transport plan, going back a few years ago when they were doing the road development along Waipatu, and so that was controlled by the Hastings District Council. At that time, I had mentioned at this hui that the public bus stops, especially there was one across the road from the marae that needed to be reinstated, and another one needed to be placed along close to the marae area. Unfortunately, this committee couldn't really do much because it was controlled by the Hastings District Council. So what kind of collaboration does this committee have with our big sister or big brother over in Hastings? Because I think that's a concern, because when we talk about the Hawke's Bay transport planning, are we talking to our Hastings District Council, or they just carry on doing their thing, and hopefully what we're trying to do over here, it combines later on? Is there that consistent collaboration, I suppose, I'm trying to ask here?
Well, I'm going to let you put that as a question to the staff, to what in our plan and what in our operating protocols. And by the way, I think we're the tuakana the other taina, so yeah.
Through you, Chair. Look, you're quite right, Api. I think it's fair to say that historically there has been a bit of misalignment between the public transport plan and the supporting infrastructure. I can't off the top of my head remember the section in the draft public transport plan, but we do set out how we want to work with our co-investment partners, NZTA, the TAs, and to an extent commercial enterprises for things like concession fees and so on and so forth. What Russell and I have been doing in the development of this RPTP is working really, really closely with the Hastings Transport and Engineering team, and same with the Napier guys, on any challenges or issues with the routes where we might start thinking about putting bus stops and the like. And so what we're starting to see is all of that is starting to roll into detailed plans. What our intent is from an operational perspective is to use this network almost as it's sort of the wrong phrase, but as a bit of a circuit breaker. So by that I mean it's a circuit breaker for public transport services in our region, and that we're getting a new network, it's a new opportunity, it's going to be a different model, and it's also an opportunity for us to work really, really closely with the TAs to create a long-term infrastructure investment pipeline. Now, what that's going to mean is that even if it's, paint, pole and sign in the short term, in the first instance when we implement, by working really, really closely with them to define where those stops go and bringing that back to those communities to sense check it, then we can go, okay, so what level of demand can we reasonably expect at this bus stop? Then what sort of bus stop does that need to be? What supporting infrastructure do we need? Do we need to think about changing the intersection, widening the footpath, whatever it is? What that then gives us, like I say, is this long-term infrastructure investment pipeline, and that can then go into subsequent long-term plans and regional land transport plans, and therefore we have the funding to actually enable it. So over time, as we increase our levels of service and we improve the service, we will also have improved supporting infrastructure. So it's hand in glove, I think, is what I'm trying to say from now.
Oh, well, you've heard the answer. Now you get to complete your kōrero as you see fit, Api.
Yeah, okay, it just seems strange, eh? We were talking about our regional transport plan. Really strange that we're not all working together. So we know what we want to do and what we should be, how we should be interacting with the Hastings District Council. Yeah, I've just looked at it over the years as been frustrating. So, and things were done over there, and they just went ahead anyway, regardless of what we were saying here. You know, there was no compromise or whatever. And I get it, I suppose. And I suppose, you know, we have planners in that council, this council, and I suppose who's the most arrogant ones could be them, you know. And they don't want to listen to what we are wanting to do here. And so it's all that arrogance that comes in. You see it. And what do you do about it, you know? And I think that's where one of the big problems are. Planners against planners. And that guy there's got a bigger degree than your degree, and he's got more say over everything that happens on the roads, you know? And sometimes it's just common sense. Don't have to be a rocket scientist. Just common sense should prevail.
Thank you, Api.
Mr Chair, if I can just be really clear, we have been working very closely with both officers at both councils. Route by route, we've actually gone through it with them, so we're really narrowing down. Internally, we're working on where we think the stops will be, but we will actually be in the car with the officers of both councils, driving the routes, pointing out where they need to be. So to be really clear, we are working very closely, and we've addressed both councils at a political level as well.
Thank you, Russell, and I do note policy 47 is to work collaboratively with local councils to add more bus shelters to the network, subject to funding, ensuring the shelters and or stops are fit for formal functions. So I guess that collaboration works in there. May not be the ideal or strong enough, Api, but that's the home that work would live in. So thank you for your thoughts there, and I understand the frustration. It's partly why I've been championing a regional management approach to public transport, which is something that's still working its way through. So, Councillor Price.
Well, just in answer to that point, I've received no negative feedback from our officers on the way this is dealt with. I think the new network is quite exciting. Comments I get is there'll be a regular bus route that will be, if you miss one, you'll catch another one shortly after, which is a big thing for them. I guess for Napier, we're an age-friendly city, and the only thing, and why I harp on about my way, but you've given me an answer, is some alternative that can actually get people to those buses, and then they can go wherever they wish to go to. So it's something we're really doing. I think Russell and Bryce, you've done a great job, and you've been easy to talk to from a politician's point of view, which you've been well trained, obviously. Tongue in cheek on that one. I guess Bayview is, it's good that we're going to go to Bayview. It does worry me about, I hate seeing big buses driving around with not many people in them. And then that with time, maybe an alternative that comes in to giving them a good service with a lesser bus or some other style of transport. But I did mention the bus stop in Church Road, that came out in our annual plan, so out of our annual plan, if that's all that we got that anyone's not happy about it, so it's quite reassuring that you've got it pretty right. So I'm fully in support of it and can't wait for it to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. And can I just check that that bus stop location you're talking about would align with our Route 3, I think it is?
So, Chair B, we're obviously still refining Taradale.
Okay.
I think we've identified that that's one of our issues, been consulted closely with that community.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just further to that, our previous decision on the Napier Library did push it a little bit. So we have decided to keep their library open, which has taken a little bit of pressure off that, but it is still quite a logical answer, I think, to have a bus stop close to the library.
Your Route 2 does at least go to the bottom corner of Church Road along
Yeah, so it's only
Puppy Road. So, yeah.
if you stopped out on Church Road, it's a 400-metre walk or something, isn't it? So it's not too bad.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buddo.
Thank you, and look, echoing your comments on the effort the staff have gone through to go through the submissions and come up with quality comments and responses and updates to the document, and I don't disagree with any of those. I have had some concerns around the cashless payments, but with Councillor Williams's question around how you can utilise the Motu Move card, you can use cash to top that up and then use it. So I guess there's a pretty good way through there, and take Katrina's point that we'll be well updated and understand when that will happen. To Arpi's point, I think you guys have worked very well with our team at HDC, with our governance as well, and you've also invited some of our councillors to have more bespoke sessions to discuss those issues. So thank you very much. And there's some councillors who have some very personal interests in that, and I'm sure express those well. I think there's always going to be a challenge between the differing responsibilities and budgetary pressures that will always make the priorities in terms of investment in hard infrastructure a challenge. And I think, it's good we've usually got a staff member from HDC here who can also listen to those concerns. I see he just jumped off. So, but look, overall, very happy with the way the submissions have gone, with the comments that have been made and the changes that have been made to the document. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buddo. Councillor Taylor.
Basically echoing that. Thank you to staff for the way the report was set out, and everything was very easy to follow. Great to see the commuter trial achieve support through the submissions and to be retained in the plan, albeit still waiting for funding. A big part of that being successful is making sure, when it happens, is making sure that we have those decent connections at the other end, if it's to be successful once people arrive in Hastings and or Napier. With the changes to total mobility and CHB now being rated for it, you can expect to see an uplift in awareness of their service, regardless of whether we're hitting a ceiling there. It was noted in 58.5 but not touched in the response. So just noting that CHB was previously getting a service they weren't paying for, but that's not the way they see it. Pleased to see driver education included in future plans, and just wanted to recognise all the strong submissions from the disability and aged networks, and to applaud them for the work that they put into those. That was really, came across really strongly in the submissions. I think we need to keep pressure on the Ministry of Education, and I just thought I'd highlight that there is a remit going forward to the LGNZ AGM in July, to provide to advocate for the Ministry of Education to provide an improved service for families and to better integrate the services with council-provided public transport services. And so hopefully it's not just us spinning that story. It's I think that came from Nelson or somewhere like that. So yes. It's quite strong. I'm not sure, I could have said this later, but I'll say it now. Last week, I had the joy of stepping out of my accommodation in Wellington, getting on an airport shuttle to the airport, and watched the people using their cards, and including a student who, it beeped and said, you have to, your balance is low, you have to update this. I'd never experienced that, or not in a country that speaks English, so I can understand what was going on. So I stepped out of my accommodation, got on the airport shuttle, got off the plane at Auckland, got a $5 bus to the airport, to the hub, got a $6 train to Green Lane, and walked 100 metres to my accommodation. And so all in all, a really great public transport day for me, and all in under $20, apart from the flight. And so, yeah, it was just timely that was where I was, that was where I was going the day we were hearing the submissions for this. So, yeah, it was timely for me to get that reminder on public transport as somebody who lives rurally and doesn't have any. So that was more of a comment than I'm not sure if it was appropriate to say it then. But yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Linda.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments, firmly wearing the co-funder, the partner hat on this one. First of all, just need to recognise and give everybody confidence on this one, the work that officers have done to make sure that we've got alignment strategically and with the legislative updates. So we may not all be across 2023 changes to the LTME, especially for the sustainable public transport framework, which it's well aligned to. The officers have also done a really good job of ensuring that while public transport is not the number one priority in the GPS, that it does align with the priorities, so everything from economic growth through to value for money. So thinking about opportunities for attraction of future funding, whether in this or the next one, there's some really good future-proofing work being done there. So I was really pleased to see that. Also as well, I've just got to recognise from NZTA that the plan is one thing, but the Regional Council and officers have been doing a lot of work on funding and fair policy and private share in response to GPS requirements. So it was really positive to see that coming through as well in the plan. And thank you for your work on private share, because I know it's been hard in a post-cyclone environment for the region. The other part as well, and I know it's in the recommendations too, the commitment to monitoring and ongoing community engagement, but alongside comprehensive communications and marketing. I think with the change that's denoted in the plan, that is critical, and we all have a role to play in that. So that was also very positive to see. But my last point that I would like to make, and picking up on some of Councillor Taylor's experiences, as a PTA, the Regional Council has the responsibility for the delivery of the service, but some of what we've discussed and some of what we heard in submissions is actually lying in the broader system levers that the district councils and city councils have to come to the table with. So when we think about the biggest barriers to engaging in public transport, is it on time? Is it affordable? And how easy is it to get to the bus stop? So the first and last mile and the infrastructure that surrounds that. So whether it's where to park my bike or my mobility scooter, do I have a shelter to stand under? Is it easier to park my car rather than get on the bus? These are all things that the Regional Council can influence, but sit with us as in RTC, but individual district councils. So if we're serious in the aspirations and the ambitions that contained in here, I think it's just really important for us all to note and be taking that back into our respective organisations, that there's a fundamental part, if not the most fundamental part, sits with the other councils around the table to support the increase in public transport uptake. So that would be my one point, and I'm not sure how strongly that came through for everybody, but it's the most critical thing from a system perspective that you can all do to ensure that it's a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Matt.
Yeah, I just commented on the plan, and I guess anything that increases public transport is good from a health point of view, and improving air quality, getting mobility for those wonderful people that can't drive, and increasing access to health services. So working with Bryce and Russell, looking at where the services go, it's very well aligned with getting to general practices and the hospital, all staff to the hospital as well. And I guess going forward, Linda said a lot of these things, but my 2 points were around just advertising and promoting it as well, making that the bus is sort of making it, the lack of a better words, making it cooler. I guess lots of people see it as an other thing, something other people do, but making it something as in everyone can do it. So breaking down those barriers as well. Like, for example, you may have like a public transport week or something, getting people on, taking those first step to get on the bus to start with, breaking that initial barrier, and then making the experience good, which Linda's talked through a lot about as well. So like even on the bus, the journey being good, staff greeting you, or every now and again, even just small things, might have giveaway or prizes every now and again for people that use the bus, and that general promotion, making it a good experience, so you recommend it to a friend. And so for example, if the bus, even for example if it's slightly late but you had a good experience, it's going to be much better than if the bus was late or the shelter wasn't there, the driver was grumpy at you or something else like that, or the seats weren't clean or something like that. So just generally making that experience good is really important as well.
Thanks, Matt. Craig, anything you want to
Yes, representing AA members, no specific comments. Just two small comments. One, information is important, and I see there's a proposal I read somewhere about having at bus stops a time that the next bus is due to arrive. That's absolutely a real promotion thing and makes customer satisfaction so much better. So I think that's really important. And the big overriding thing, of course, comes down to funding, and that's an extremely important issue. But yep, that's all.
Ian, anything you wanted to say?
No comments. Just have to say the plan's been very well put together.
Okay. Well, look, I just wanted to start with reminding everyone why we do public transport. I had a constituent on the phone last night, basically says, I think everyone's got a car, haven't they? Why do you need buses? And I just made the point to that person that we've heard very long, loud and clear from a whole range of different sectors of our community, from the young to the old, to the less able and less mobile, to the vision impaired, to the deaf, that without public transport they can't go anywhere. They're stuck at home. It's the only way they can get to the doctor, the dentist, the supermarket, their job, their auntie. Would you want to be trapped in your home, unable to get anywhere? There's a huge equity underpinning to public transport that's sometimes lost on my colleagues, I think, at the council, and seeing this as a nice to have. It's not. It's almost a fundamental human right. And in addition to that, it has huge benefits, as with rail, for our transport system and reducing congestion on the roads, reducing emissions in our region, and reducing road maintenance. So if you look across the system from an economic efficiency perspective per GPS, from value for money per GPS, it makes sense to invest in public transport, I would argue, more so than investing $900 million in a road we've already got. Thank you, Guy, for that quote. I just wanted to remind everyone why we're bothering with this. It matters. Thanks for allowing me to have that little lecture, end of the sermon. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points for the deliberations. One is to suggest for 4.1 on the cashless fares that we say it, a couple of suggestions there, and I'm going to be a little wild here, so please have your pen ready, Leanne, that rather than 3 months, we consider 6 months, in case there's just some sort of aberration over a 3-month period. I don't know what it could be, but maybe 6 months. So I will invite some comment on staff with that. But regardless of that we add the words on no less than 2 months or some months' notice to the community. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, hey, 3 months, March 31st, boom, April the 1st, it's gone. I'm sure that would be the case anyway. But just adding words like on no less than 2 months to the community. And a quick feed, just while you're here, any reason why we couldn't increase that to 6 months? Would that be a good thing to do or a bad thing to do?
Mr. Chair, the policy we've proposed was based on a moment in time.
Yeah.
And if this committee wanted to change it to 6 months, it
Okay.
would be no real issue.
Because that would show a more consistent trend. I just don't want to be like the banks saying you can have checks anymore and leaving people high and dry. Okay, well, we'll consider that. There were two recommendations in the substantive body of the report that haven't made their way to the end. One of them is my own little brain explosion, because we need a circuit breaker here for Central Hawke's Bay. It's always, oh, we'll do a trial when we've got funding. Well, how do we actually get funding? What do we do? How do we shove that? So my recommendation that's recorded on page 14, that's not, that I think needs to be added to the recommendations at the end, is that we recommend as a committee that both HBRC and CHBDC, we recommend to both of them that appropriate funding is included in their annual plan to enable a trial service to commence subject to suitable co-funding from the NZTA. So that's a conversation between whether that's a regional rate that we target in some way, or it's a shared rating effort or whatever. But just recommend that, sorry councils, you need to put that on your agenda next year. What you do with it, it's up to you. But so far as we're concerned, get on with it. So that's lifting out the bottom recommendation on 14 and adding it to as a new recommendation, I don't know, 11 or something like that. The other one is that we have also not included the recommendation on page 15 that staff continue to work with Te Tai Whenua or Heretaunga to explore route options for Mahu, etc. So it's lifting that one out and putting that at the end too. It just didn't find its way into that. I think I audit checked the rest and they all landed, but those two didn't. Just a note at 5.2, I think the policy reference is 85, not 95, so it just needs to be corrected. There's one other little thing in there. It's just fallen on the floor and out of my head. I want to... Oh yes, I found it. Recommendation 3.2 reflects a number of recommendations that you would continue to work with the local communities to refine the routes. And where that's discussed earlier on, it says, with a final recommended network to be presented to the 29 August RTC meeting. So it's just to add those words, to present a final recommendation to the 29 August RTC meeting to the end of 3.2. Okay? We're adding to the end of 3.2 to present a final recommended network to the 29 August meeting. Okay? And then finally, break out Frank Sinatra, Councillor Price.
Did it my way?
We have got, because I actually think, you know, the conclusions of our My Way evaluation was seriously challenged by a number of the submitters. That there was some, I guess, unfairness inherent to that around the availability of buses and drivers, you know, over some of that evaluation period, and it was disrupted by the cyclone and all the rest of it. And I think that our communities value My Way in a way, putting aside cost, that isn't reflected in our transport service. And so it's like Linda said, we need to future-proof this plan. And I think it substantially does. I'm not actually recommending a change, but just taking you to 46, which says investigate My Way as a complement to the bi-directional service. And that is important rather than substituting. And that we will continue to investigate the role and seek suitable levels of funding. So it's really just, I'm suggesting an additional recommendation. It's my last change, I think, one very, very tiny one, that we add a recommendation that this committee continue to lobby for funding for My Way as a complement to fixed rate services, building on the learnings of the My Way trial. In other words, we just stay on it like a dripping tap, like the rail people, until one day a GPS swings in behind us. So it's really, I guess, just adding a recommendation to sit alongside what's in the plan. And it would read something like, that this committee continue to lobby for funding support for My Way as a complement to the fixed rate services, building on the learnings of the My Way evaluation trial. And I'm sorry, there is actually one tiny little tweak, and I think 9.1, I'd like to add the word lead. So it's after community transport lead role, just adding that word lead I think is important. That was the wording that was put to us in the submissions. On page 60 you'll see it there. So it's someone that would be within the staff, however funded, that takes a community transport lead role, and then alongside that is the recommendation about community transport funding. So those are the proposed changes. It's building in those two amendments around the Tai Whenua and around Central Hawke's Bay. It's that reference to the 29 August at the end of 3.2. It's the correction to the policy change in 5.2. It's the adding the word lead. There was also the on no less than 2 months community for 4.1 and the change to 6 months, and the recommendation about My Way. I'm hoping everyone's kind of got that. I think for the purpose of the minutes, if you haven't got it exactly all, we've got it on, it's recorded. And with all of that said, having heard, I think, from everyone around this table, I'd like to move recommendations 1 through to what is probably now 14, as I've amended, to enable this plan to proceed. Leanne, are you happy with all of everything there? Is everyone kind of on board with what we're doing here?
Yep.
Okay, so someone second those recommendations? Okay, all in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Congratulations, we have a public transport plan. Now I'd like to take a short break. What have I done? What have I missed?
No, you haven't.
What are you writing, Beard?
I missed who seconded that.
Oh, you missed who seconded that? Councillor Price. You were flat out trying to type it all. Okay, we'll just have a little short break and then come back to some of the other items, if that'd be right.
Yes, thank you.
We now move to the general items of business, starting with Regional Youth Transport Program update. Who wants to take us through that report?
I will share. Thank you. Look, I'll take the paper broadly as read. You will see that as per the minutes or the actions from the last committee meeting, we have presented an updated program of work. At this point in time, I guess treat this as a reasonably firm draft. There may be a few other work streams that happen to jump on the agenda later in the year. But the big things on the work plan are around the regional land transport plan. So as I mentioned in the last agenda item, we will soon be starting in earnest on the 27 to 30 regional land transport plan, and particularly the public transport new network implementation. This will likely be updated, as I mentioned, throughout the year. Just briefly on the land transport plan, just to give the committee a little bit more detail on that. So I believe it was last week, a draft timeline was released on the National Land Transport Plan development. So just to run everyone through that, what we're looking at is early June, this June, so next month, no, this month. Gosh, that's June, far out. Sorry, excuse me. NZTA are going to be releasing evidence to the sector to inform the development of the Regional Land Transport Plan strategic front-end sections. Early March next year, NZTA will look at releasing modelling to the sector to inform the development of continuous programs, so maintenance operations by TAs and road safe and public transport for us. Potentially and hopefully by May 2026, a draft GPS out for consultation. By June 26, NZTA plan to release evidence to the sector to inform the development of improvement program bids, so those big bucket items and potentially low cost, low risk as well. By early November next year, draft continuous programs submitted into Transport Investment Online. Early December 26, draft improvement activities, including the State Highway Investment Proposal, submitted into Transport Investment Online. Early April 27, final continuous program and improvement bids submitted. 1st of August is the potential RLTP submission deadline. So if you cast your mind back to last year, August was the deadline. That was largely due to a lot of changes in GPS and shuffling and all of that sort of stuff. The agency has gone through a reasonably detailed lessons learned process internally and with the sector nationally, looking at some of the changes that can be made. One of the core intents of these changes is so we get better alignment between long-term plans and regional land transport plans, which will be, if we nail it this time around, that would be great for everyone involved, which is fantastic. So that work is probably going to start in the next few months. We will start looking at the strategic front end, generally within the tag, thinking about what, if anything, we need to change and what the direction might be. Some initial thinking, and this is just me and Russell having water cooler conversations, is that our regional land transport plan 24-27 was very much focused on asset management and resilience and really building back from the cyclone. So I think it's safe to say we carry on with that trajectory, but also looking at what the cyclone showed us and what it highlighted. So what it highlighted is that lifeline links are very important. That first link in the value chain, the farm orchard gate to point of processing, is very important. Rural and local roads are very important. And as we've heard earlier today, freight as well. So potentially elevating those in importance and having a supporting investment program to flow through. However, all of that will be brought to the committee in due course. Those are just some very initial thoughts. So just going to the paper for a very brief overview of each one of the work streams. Road Safe Hawke's Bay, so those activities will continue. There is an agenda item soon providing an update on that, so I won't spend any time there. Active transport strategy, conscious that has been on this committee's radar for a period of time. That is certainly something that we will continue to look at. Resource, time and budget to do it are certainly constraints, but equally, from a transport system planning perspective, it makes sense to have something there and sorted and in the drawer should we welcome some funding in the future. So it's firmly on the radar and we'll sort of tick away on. The other big one is the new network implementation with public transport. So that's, and again, that is likely to change in terms of it may grow with what we need to do. But there it's really looking forward to the implementation of the network, the comms, the engagement, the marketing of that, and creating awareness and an appetite to use the service, and also looking at how we enable that. Supporting infrastructure both in the immediate term, so at implementation, and those improvements longer term as we lead out to the next LTP and next RLTP. So I'll stop there for any thoughts or feedback or questions on that work program. Councillor Price.
I guess active transport, is that sitting a little bit like you mentioned Central Hawke's Bay Transport? Do we need to set a little bit of a target, because it has come up as sitting where it is sitting for quite a while?
Yeah, please do.
Through you, Chair, with RM reform, our regional land transport plan, the intention is that it has a greater hook or greater importance in the new RM system through spatial planning. And so Bryce is right, it's essential that we do an active transport strategy that will then feed into the region's spatial plan, whatever that will look like in the future RM system. And so not only the transport team, but the policy team are currently working with the TLAs on what that might look like going forward. So I think, yes, it's currently sitting there, not going anywhere because we haven't had the time or resources to do it, but we will have to find them because it is vitally important for the new RM system going forward, and that's a good thing. It's not really an answer for you, but it is we're committed and we'll find it somehow.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I know we've got a Road Safe Hawke's Bay item coming up, but I just noted in there the MOUs being sent to partner councils and just wanted to double check that you'd had a good response from that. It didn't go into any other details of the MOU for Road Safe with the invoices sent.
Yes, through you, Chair. So those MOUs were for the local share joint contributions. So as far as we can find, this region has done a cluster approach since at least 2015 for road safe funding.
Oh, so it just I haven't noticed it in that program checker, or is it just the first time it's
the first time that we've put it on. So we did discuss it, I believe, at this committee and certainly amongst officers at the end of the last NLTP period, and we've since developed those in their 3-year funding MOUs, just setting out the percentage share and the dollar share feeding into the local share. That's a lot of shares feeding into the local share portion of the road safe funding. And just to be clear with the local share splits, we don't come up with those, so they are given to us by the NZTA road safety team, and that's based on a very, very complex calculation, but effectively looks at all of the funding assistance rates, blends them together, weights them, and then goes Central Hawke's Bay is X percent, Regional Council is X percent, and so on and so forth. And so that is then broken down into a dollar term per year, and then we wrap that up in a nice MOU.
Thank you. I've only been on the committee for 5 years and I've just figured that out. Thank you.
This is the first time we've done these.
The MOU is new.
But the process isn't.
That's right,
Yeah.
to formalise the process, because as we all know, unless it's written down, we often lose consistency, or we lose our processes through staff coming and going, and what remains in heads goes. So we're formalising that process so everyone knows what it looks like, whether that's us or the people that come after us.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the paper? I just wanted to underscore the point about active transport. There's been so much we've had to contend with in the last 3 years. Bridges, roads, you name it, let alone public transport. I think active transport has probably, understandably, taken less attention or received less attention, but that can't continue, and there was talk about the TAG group continuing to work on active transport, and there are policies in our land transport plan around that, and I do hope that those surface for greater attention as soon as possible, because the health benefits and the environmental benefits and the network benefits are huge. And I'm sure if Councillor Van Bake was here, he'd say the same thing. All right. If there's no other comments or questions on that report, I'd like to move that the committee receives and notes that program report. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Butto, all in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried, thank you. Public transport. You can probably make this quick.
Yep. So, through the chair, I think the key highlights just to pull out. The report says that Hawke's Bay Regional Council is planning 16 solar powered real time. I want to say it's happening. Should be installed by the end of this month, early July. So very excited about those. Those are bus stop upgrades, and they'll be amazing. Also want to confirm that from Monday, the CCTV will be installed on the Regional Council's buses across Napier and Hastings. And that, just to remind you, can be not only recorded for 30 days, but live viewed in the event of the bus driver hitting a panic button. And also want to thank NZTA because they have co-funded this through their bus driver welfare fund. Just on public transport patronage, we have just received May's figures through, and they remain pretty constant, which is good because we put our 5% fare increase through at the beginning of May, and it can always sometimes have a negative effect on patronage, so for it to remain steady is great news. And just finally, what's not in the paper, but as for your information, is that our Regional Council has teamed up with Napier and Hastings Libraries for a school holiday promotion, where we'll be printing a Discovery passport, and they'll collect stamps from the bus driver and stamps at the library, and then at the end of the school holidays they can put them in a box and they'll go into a draw to win some prizes. So we're just out there doing things.
There's marketing for you.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
That's all I really need to add to the total mobility we talked about earlier, that it continues to increase in usage, which is good on one hand and challenging funding-wise on the other.
Okay, any questions or comments? Councillor Taylor.
With thinking about not being negative, but it was I'd like to comment that you've just made about the solar powered and the CCTV and everything. It was great. Just one line in there, the data reflects a consistent level of public transport usage across the region. Just a nice reminder that Wairoa and CHB don't have it. Consistent? Yeah.
Linda.
Really interested in the school holiday activity. It would be great, even if it was just for NZTA, but just to get an outcomes of that and the investment as well. A bit of a summary would be awesome, and what else we could learn from it too. Nice. Excellent initiative.
Through you, Chair, just a shout out to the to the transport team. They seem to be pulling all sorts of rabbits out of hats with no money. I echo what our chair has said. Russell and the team, Bryce, are doing really cool stuff, engagement with no funding or very little. So we're more than happy to share all of that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the holidays thing sounds great with young kids as well. They love discovering and they love the bus. So that's great and a good example of, high value but hopefully low cost as well. Question on the data, it would be nice to see maybe a longer term data as well, and maybe like a yearly adjusted average as well, just to adjust for those seasonal variations to see what's our data looking like compared to a few years ago. It's great to see.
Okay, a couple of comments from me. It's great to see the solar-powered real-time information is reasonably frequent user of the Auckland Public Transport Service. It's just, it's as you said before, Craig, it's a game changer for PT. If you get the, okay, 7 minutes, I can do something with that 7 minutes, maybe I'll get my laptop out, whatever you're doing. But and that was another strong theme in the submissions, was to have that real-time information, so that's great. I just wanted to mention around total mobility, we didn't draw any attention to it, but there are recommendations in our policies that we've just approved to explore funding, not only from other partners, including ACC, but also to make the process of impairment assessments more straight, to help support the funding for that. There was an inquiry through to Russell from Councillor Foley about why do we do total mobility? Why doesn't ACC do it? Why doesn't the Health New Zealand do it? And Russell produced a very comprehensive answer that explained how all of those parts of the picture fixed together. That went back to Councillor Foley. So that was a shout out to Russell for really taking the time to pen that email to explain where our total mobility funding fits in that bigger picture. So that's all I wanted to say.
Can we see that?
Yeah, I can forward that email to you now.
Thanks, thank
I'll
you.
forward that email to you now. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? If not, someone like to move? See me doing it all the time. Now we've got Councillor Butto and Councillor Price seconding. All in favour?
Aye.
Done. Right. Road Safe Hawke's Bay.
Thank you, Chair. I'll again largely take the paper as read. Just a few key highlights. Liz, Helen, and the Road Safe team, but with Maria also in the transport team helping, have been incredibly busy. As this committee will be well aware, the budget was significantly cut for that, but they still managed to do a lot on the smell of an oily rag. So you'll see in the paper there, paragraph 3, there is a box with a few highlights or counts of activities that have happened over the last quarter. And in fact, since writing this paper, child restraint clinics, Helen, Kelly and Liz delivered one at the Tumbling Tots in Hastings, I believe, late last week, and that was exceptionally well utilised. They ended up having to stay there for another, I think it was 2 hours. So, great example of fishing where the fish are, and it was super well received. Feedback suggests that people really appreciated having someone there to talk to and to check things and to get some safety tips for their youngsters. And I know that because my wife went with our boys and got ours looked at as well, which is great. The business road safety program is going really, really well. Liz and the team delivered one to the Napier City, I don't know if you call it works group or whoever Parks team, in I think it was February or March, and if memory serves, that was attended by some 150 or 170 workers, really, really engaged in the program, came away with some great outcomes, had some really good conversations, and an appetite has been expressed for another one, either later in the year or next year as well. There's been a few other ones brewing away in the works. A couple of youth programs, so that's the really intensive programs with Liz and with the police for those who are just about to enter the justice system. So they're continuing. I've had some really good outcomes with those as well for the attendees. Again, noting it's not too many attendees, but it's those who really sort of need it. And I think the biggest win in the road safety stable at the moment is the youth, the school education events. So going back to the budget cuts, or the funding challenges rather, the committee will recall that we've had to stop the Regional Road Safety Expo that is typically held across the first week of May with all of the schools coming to the Pettigrew Green Arena because we simply can't afford it. So what's Liz done? Well, she's gone to the schools. She's done Havelock North High School, Hastings Boys, Hastings Girls, and I think maybe one or two others. There's quite a few others in the works as well. But those have been incredibly well received. We've developed an attendee survey for those, for students to fill out after the event. We haven't closed that off, but early feedback suggests that students were incredibly engaged in the sessions, so much so that we hit a few little silly responses in there, and we've actually had no one tick any of those or provide any ludicrous or out the gate responses. So it shows that it's hitting home. The students are learning and they're really engaging in those sessions. So that's something that we'll look to continue. And I'll just hand over to Russell to highlight his few things.
I don't think there's anything further I need to add. I think the report's quite comprehensive. But having attended those school events, I can confirm that everyone is very well engaged. They're really good. I want to point out one of the pictures. So you might wonder why a police officer is breath testing a student. So now, the thing is, of course, talking about the impaired driving and what alcohol does. That's a talk. Some people think if they throw a bit of Listerine down their mouth to wash their mouth out, means it'll obscure the alcohol. Listerine has alcohol in it. So a little taste of Listerine will set off the breath test device. And that was an example.
Does it go to the own goal, right? Okay, thank you for that. And look, all credit to Liz. That's another great piece of innovation. I think she went to where the fish are there. Yeah. Okay, any other comments or queries?
Do you think the in-school program is actually probably better than the Road Safety Week?
Through you, Chair. I mean, it's slightly difficult to say. I think looking at it objectively, there's smaller groups. There's, you're with people that you know. There's sort of from a student perspective, there's an established level of camaraderie and comfort in engaging with the certain activities. And the initial responses that we've had via the survey very firmly cement that. So I would cautiously say yes, probably.
Sorry, through you, Chair. I think it's an and. I think they both offer different experiences. So the thing that the Regional Expo does is brings all of the services together and much broader than what we can take to an individual school, for example. So we can have a lot more wraparound services at a Regional Expo. But what we have found from this is that we can tailor a lot more too. So I think it's an and, not a or.
They're pretty hard-hitting, some of the presentations at the Road Safety Week.
That's right. And so that's what we probably are missing at these events is those independent or outside speakers coming in. But Liz does an exceptional job at that as well. So I think it's an and.
And if we had funding, we would go back and try and get the regional Road Safety Week back on track.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Craig. Any other comments or queries, Matt?
It's great to see all that road safety work. I just had one comment about, like, if you're, for the business road safety program, if you're thinking about other groups as well, like Te Whatuara would be a good one as well, because we've got hundreds of community and district nurses out there on the roads every day as well. So, large group.
All right. Thanks for that, and please pass on our appreciation for all of the work done to Liz. And thank you for the report, Bryce and Russell. I'd like to move that report be received. Thank you, Councillor Taylor, for seconding. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. We could have lunch now, or we could do the lower North Island freight strategy and then break, come back for NZTA and verbal advisory reports. How would that be? So should we just do that one last one before we have...
I'll need to drop out now, so I won't be able to do...
The comment from you before you go, from an advisory member perspective, that you would have been able...
QL is still part of the Trek Alliance, and we've completed all significant works south of Hastings. The work remaining south of Hastings with Trek is more business as usual, replacing contaminated ballast from the cyclone, and some other small works. But the Tutaikuri River Bridge, that's one that upstream of State Highway 51 bridge. Trek is working on both those bridges. I think NZTA might cover off the road one in their bit, but Trek's also working on the rail bridge to replace several of the spans. I think I've done a brief on this in more detail in the past, and we're working with Hawkesbury Regional Council at the moment about some river channel works, and doing quite a bit of work with iwi and other stakeholders on that. So we haven't fully agreed the earthworks in the river, but we've agreed the replacement of several of the spans there. And once that's done, that will be the completion of all Cyclone Gabriel work and other works to keep the line open and productive between Pami and Napier's just ongoing as a more business as usual type process.
Thank you. Just remind, what bridge was that, Daniel?
Tutaikuri, Waitangi Stream, the one just south of Awatoto that was really visibly destroyed during the cyclone. The one between Clive and Awatoto?
Yeah, okay, and that's the one that we were concerned was built back pretty much as it was.
Yeah, so we've noted that it is going to be at the same alignment and level, and we've been working with Hawkesbury Regional Council on, we're trying to advocate for some improvements to the flow capacity, and we've asked Hawkesbury Regional Council if they would want to contribute any funding. I think there's a shortage of funding everywhere, but I believe Hawkesbury Regional Council, this is still formally to be stated, I think they see it as a positive, because this does help with the flood levels at the adjacent stop banks, but potentially aren't able to contribute to assist with funding.
Oh, well, if there's anything left from our NIWI projects, maybe one day. Thank you, Daniel, for being with us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Should we just do the Lower North Island freight strategy?
Sure, I'll talk to this briefly, Mr. Chair. This is for the information of the committee on work that officers are currently doing. This is quite critical work on so many different levels. Firstly, obviously we have future RLTPs that we need to inform, and at the moment freight is something that we don't have enough data on, don't have enough planning on, and something that is inter-regional, clearly. And some of the other areas like the Upper North Island and the whole of South Island also have their own strategies that they've either got in place or they're working on. And that helps them get funding for major investments. And so if we're not on the same page and doing the same thing, we will simply miss out. So I could go on and on and on, but I think it's pretty much all there, and I can just take questions.
Yeah. Questions, folks?
What are going to be the biggest roadblocks to getting that underway?
It's always funding, of course, and that's why we have to put forward a funding case. There are obviously parts of this that are separate parts and then in a whole. So that's what we do about developing a reason to do do this and then put a funding case for it. And that will sort of sit into the next NLTP, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair, at the same time, I'd just highlight that there is a new parliamentary inquiry that's recently been launched into ports and the maritime sector. And there are 6 terms of reference, or 6 key areas, of focus, including economic contribution, efficiency, infrastructure and investment needs, that and the security and supply chain resilience, that a low and influence freight strategy would absolutely be critical to have already. I mean, timing's not great, but that's the input that we would need.
Chair, and so I understand there's a planning group that's the equivalent of you across the Lower North Island Regional Councils that's working this up. Yeah, well, I think, there'd be music to Guy and Neil's ears, particularly when it comes to rail. The focus is very much on Auckland and Wellington under the National Rails funding plan that KiwiRail put up, and under the GPS. So we need to be loud and we need to be collective. So I fully endorse that. It's a great initiative. And equally partnering with Tairāwhiti as much as we are with Horizons and further south. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on that report? Keep up the good work. Can we move? I'll move that we receive that report. Councillor Barrow seconding by that nod. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, well, let's break for lunch. Come back at 1:30.
It's just occurred to me that the RTC should make a
back to the business of the committee. Linda, we have your presentation. It has been circulated. It's available to us. So if you'd like to speak to that, and then we'll take any questions.
I don't know if you're going to pop it up or not.
No.
No?
We've all got it.
Okay.
So we'll just look it through. Tell us which one you're doing.
Only ever speak to one on the presentation pack. The detailed pack's just for information, as always. Feels really weird not to have it to speak to because I don't read out what's on the slides. Unusual. Is this a new format?
I've just been instructed that that's what we're doing, so.
It's just that we don't have extra people around to be able to run the presentation for you.
Do you need my iPad?
No, it's just I'm not allowed to plug a laptop into another system, which seems to be an issue.
Assume we're all looking at the screen instead of looking at our iPads, but
very
you know
unusual.
exactly what you're talking about, and you say, right, I'm talking to the slide about safety cameras.
So we're on safety cameras. We had a good update last week, last RTC from our safety camera team. We're heading towards full transition now for 1 July. Just to confirm for everybody, this is for speed detection only. There's some great images there of the new mobile safety cameras on both trailers and SUVs that you'll begin to see out in the network. And I know that for some of the RCAs around the table have already made contact directly with NZTA to begin discussions on mobile camera placement, understanding where they currently go and providing us with some insight and local feedback on new sites. Just to be clear as well, the funding for this does not go to our provider or to NZTA. There's no incentives or for any of tickets issued. All of the fines go back into the central government consolidated fund rather than to NZTA. The next slide on setting of speed limit rules. Just more broadly, there is a slide later on about specific to the Hawke's Bay region. We have all, thank you very much to all of the RCAs, met the deadline for your specified road lists through, so appreciate the hard work that's gone into that from our fellow RCAs. And we're almost at our deadline now for the reversals to be implemented by 1 July 2025. We all collectively have the 1 July 2026 deadline for variable speed limits outside schools. Once we're through this first round of reversals, NZTA will begin to work through the prioritisation of speed limit reviews that we are getting through. I would say there has been a substantial increase in requests coming through. We have a very, very long list right across the whole country of particularly communities and small communities that are seeking to have speed limits reviewed through their town or their community. We'll need to work through a prioritisation process for that.
So Linda, can I just stop you there for a minute?
Absolutely.
So having done a sort of a blanket reversal of changes post 20 or whatever at 21, is there now scope within the rule for communities to do a more targeted, well, you know, I want a special treatment for this section of road for a particular reason?
In short, yes. The reversals were for specific roads that were previously reversed, previously lowered.
Yeah.
And that was how they were classified. So we were required under the rule to reverse those.
In a blanket way?
Yes. However, we'll move now forwards to targeted speed reviews at the request of communities and RCAs, yeah.
And when you said 2026 for the schools variable, did you mean 25?
No, 1 July 2026 is the deadline for when all of the schools have to have their variable speed limits implemented. That's on both local roads and state highways. It's just that there's quite a lot of them. So for us all to go out and actually do the consultation, but also procure all the signs, takes a bit of time to then get them in the ground.
Okay, thank you.
The next one is the emergency works. So just noting that the board decided to retain the existing policy on qualifying events and the emergency works FAR rate, which is positive. Would just note that we will at some stage need to relook at this policy. The board haven't indicated when, but given the financial pressures that the NLTF are on, I would imagine that it will come up again in a further future NLTF cycle.
Does that mean it stayed at 20%, didn't go down to 10?
Yes, and your qualifying events is still 10, it hasn't been shifted to 20.
Okay.
Other way around. I would as well just note the positive announcement through Budget 2025 for the NIWI impacted councils, who we were successful in securing funding for the remainder of their programme right through to June 2029, so that all of the councils have their full programmes in for their recovery work, and this funding will cover that. And also as well, at the same time, the board confirmed the bespoke FARs for each council as well. So we've got greater certainty on both the funding side, but also to support more effective procurement. Maintenance, just a quick update on this one. Huge season right across the country. So if you've been out and about over the summer construction season, you will have seen a lot of activity. We've done over 2,000 lane kilometres, and a higher percentage than you would normally see as being full rehab of the roads. We've seen, very positive both outcomes from it, but feedback, even though there's been quite a bit of disruption across the network. I would note, for example, the State Highway 1 Tiro to Waihuru section. Now we're moving on to our cyclic maintenance, also as well, line marking, rumble strips, drainage, those kind of things over the winter. But you can expect to see continued high level of work right across the next 2 years of construction. Just on the significant activities slide, just going to talk to a couple on this one. First up, the Napier CVSC, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Centre. So we will be lodging consents for that this month. The construction funding for that centre has been approved. We'll look to be commencing construction at the end of 2025. There's lots of info on this one on our website if you do want to find out a bit more, or you can take a drive down to Ohakia and go through past one that we've just opened. It's really there as an aim to improve compliance, safety, and reduce heavy vehicle overloading. In short, it's got in-road technology as well, so it's a much more efficient way to do it, and it also captures a lot of data that we can use to support our own investment and planning as well. And just the other one of note for our Central Hawke's Bay colleagues, we have begun discussions on the State Highway 2 Waipokaro revocation as well. So those conversations have kicked off. A point of entry is the next step for that project. More local on setting of speed limits. You will all be aware that the auto reversal took place on State Highway 5, returning from 80 kilometres an hour to 100, and also announced the outcomes of the targeted consultation for the 3 communities along State Highway 5. The outcome of that consultation was that it did not reach the required level of support to retain them at 80 kilometres. So the full stretch of State Highway 5 is now back up to 100 kilometres. Noting the Chair's earlier comments that there has been quite a bit of, let's say, poor behaviour in terms of the speeds and the average speeds that have been seen on State Highway 5 over the holiday weekend. So thank you to our police colleagues for their enforcement work, and also working together with us to look at how we can manage that in the longer term through the safety camera network as well.
So Linda, just on that one, there'd be nothing to stop the communities of Tarawera, Te Puhui or otherwise to seek a bespoke change back for their section of the road in the future?
That would be a much higher bar because of how that road is classified.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's
more
not
for
to say
local
it's
roads.
impossible.
That's more for local roads.
It is possible on state highways, but with this one being an interregional connector, it's a much higher bar for us to look at achieving anything other than 100.
Okay.
Just a quick point No. Napier, State Highway 51, you'll all be aware, has also auto-reversed. Local maintenance work renewals programme is all done. Over 100% of that has been completed. We did 2 lane kilometres more than we were originally targeted with in the region, and we're now on to rumble stripping. So just completing that last portion of work that we're due to complete. It should be done by the end of this week. And then we're on to our cyclic maintenance across the region. Hawke's Bay Expressway, I think we're largely, most in this room, up to speed with the progress that we've made there. Just to confirm, for section 1, we're still moving through the detailed design phase. We are pending funding approval. That's an internal process within NZTA. We are expecting to start construction on section 1 by the end of this year, so late 2025, with it due to be completed in late 2027. I would note that depending on what you find under the rivers, some of the larger bridge structures may end up, being a bit into 2028, but all being well, it should be late 2027. And section 2 on the next slide, you'll note that we had the Minister here announcing just some early enabling works. That was to progress some geotech assessment and also to undertake some ground improvement works on the section 2 site. And then we are concurrently with that developing the business case for investment in section 2. That'll be going to the NZTA board for approval in August, and that will then decide how we move forward with construction on section 2. And then I think we're lastly 2 more. Waikerie Gorge is continuing well. This slide is self-explanatory. Just 2 points to note. Moving through the property acquisition process, and also as well just doing some ongoing monitoring, but looking at the existing Bailey Bridge with a view to seeing if we can improve that sooner rather than later, particularly for heavy vehicle and wide vehicle access, because it's not straightforward if you're larger than average on the road. So I think we're beginning some engagement work with particularly the freight sector and other stakeholders on the timing of that. And then lastly, because I know we've got a Trek presentation for noting, the Trek Alliance work, I think we're about 70, can't see my slides really tiny, 76, 75% complete in the Hawke's Bay region. So Trek still have a lot of work to complete for larger projects back up in Tairafiti. Things are beginning to wind down within the Hawke's Bay region now. There's still, of course, the Devil's Elbow that will be complete towards the end of this year. And there's the slip site on State Highway 50 as well, 51, 50?
Glencoe.
Yeah, the is underway now as well. But other than that, we'll see a smaller and smaller footprint from Trek in the Hawke's Bay region. We'll keep you updated with information just for noting, but in case you're getting any questions as well, so that you're well prepared to just say, look, largely most of the recovery work is now complete, apart from those 2 larger project sites where we're expecting them to be done and dusted by the end of the year. And that's all from me. Happy to take questions on anything in that presentation or the detailed pack.
Councillor Barrow.
Yeah, thanks for that. Could we at some point to this committee get an update or on the future form of the expressway and the design of all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the best. I'm thinking about when is the next RTC? Would it be post?
29 August.
29 August. Oh, that might be quite tight after the board decision, but I can see what work we do. But certainly that's one of the aspects on the investment case that map that out for the board. So once we get it through that, if they give it the tick of approval, then we can then bring it to this forum for you to have a look and see what's going on with it.
Beautiful. Thanks.
If not, we might need to defer it or do an out of cycle online or something.
Just in the renewals program, I see there was 10 lane kilometres of rebuilds, pavement rehabilitation. We've got about 500 kilometres of state highway in our area. So that means we've actually done pavement rehabilitation on 5 kilometres of actually 2-lane road, which is only about 1%, which means in terms of asset management, we're expecting our pavements to last 100 years. At that intervention level, that's what we're looking to do, or we're going to get considerably behind on the quality and standard of our pavements, not talking about reseals, but just the pavement rehabilitations. Another way of looking at it is if we think if a road was built in 1925, that road would now be reaching its end of its life. So normally roads are designed for approximately 30 years design life. It's just a real worry that we might be digging ourselves a little bit of a hole if we're not undertaking pavement rehabilitation. We can reseal and protect the surface, which does protect the pavement underneath, but it's the structural integrity of that pavement that is the actual real strength of the road.
Absolutely.
If we're only doing 1% of our network a year, then we are expecting that pavement to actually then last 100 years.
Yeah, that would not be a great approach. Certainly. So we look at it on a 3-year and a 10-year planning horizon, as opposed to what you're seeing here is the work that's undertaken in 1 year for both rehab and reseal. And we also have to look at it across the essentially the contract and the contractor network. So where their resources are, where their machinery are, and then alongside that, what we can actually physically do on a network alongside the closures that are required, the stand down periods, and the event sectors too. So we have to balance all of those when we programme on an annual plan. So what you're seeing is this year, next year will look quite different, as will the subsequent year. So it's points well made and valid if we were only looking at the programmed activity over 1 year. So I would just note that the GPS is quite specific in its requirements for asset management and to improve the overall level of service that the state highways provide, which is why there was the scene set about what it looks like right across the whole country.
It's back pre the NOC contracts, the network outcome contracts, generally 2.5% to 3% of the highway network had pavement rehabilitation works done. And since that time, we've been doing far less than that. So, you know, the AA belief is we're getting behind on this maintenance.
Yeah.
And if we continue at around 1%,
which we won't be.
In 20 years' time, we're going to have a situation where we're almost going to have to pavement rehabilitate 20 to 30% of our total highway.
I think that's probably where we are now right across the country, which is why you've seen the accelerated works in Waikato, in Taranaki and in Northland, who've received substantial additional investment, and also as well why we've changed and are moving away from the NOC contracts to the integrated delivery contracts as well. And that change, you know, is both out for tender at the moment, and for Hawke's Bay we'll begin to see that transition at the end of this year, because for the reasons that you've outlined, which the government are really, really clear, and as our NZTA, the only way in which to lift the performance is through full rehab, but there is a limit on how much you can do across the entire network in a 1 year period. But thank you. I think we're well aligned on that view.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Just another one. You said that the funding for the expressway is just an internal process.
Quite.
So there's a very unlikely that it would not be funded.
It has to go through our internal process, so be approved by the board, yes, for section 1. But given the level of investment that we've already done on the enabling works, yes.
Just a question around this expressway. Is the form, I think it's particularly for section 1, decided on? Like, I'm thinking about active transport plan around potential for cycling and pedestrian access, or if not, the facility in the future. And also thinking about the benefits of, say, having flyovers compared to roundabouts. If you think about productivity, and you slow down a roundabout compared to going straight through as well. Are those locked in yet, or are those still to be decided?
For section 1, they're pretty much locked in terms of the detailed design, but it's probably a wider question than that. We are bound by some set requirements from the specifications of roads of national significance. So things like walking and cycling facilities wouldn't be included, but the width of the designation would not preclude that in future should the desire of successive governments change and wish to, put that in. But at this stage, our design does not include walking and cycling facilities. With regards to whether you're looking at full grade separated interchanges or high efficiency roundabouts, that does again depend on the complexity and the volume that the roads are carrying, and also as well future volume. So whether in 30 to 40 years out, because that's kind of how we look at the planning and how the infrastructure will perform. If a roundabout is still the greatest and most efficient way to build it in for 40 years' time, then it could well be that there would be a roundabout there. For section 1, there are full grade separated interchanges.
And is that for the bridges as well? Like, it would seem like if you were thinking about having Bridges Street and a cycle lane in the next 30 or 40 years, you would have space for that, rather than that, obviously that at a cost of a clip-on, like we've seen with other bridges, would be a lot more than down the line. So assuming it's not the plan.
On the bridge structures, it is unlikely to carry a width at the moment that would enable walking and cycling on there, noting I'm not sure that of all of the cycle paths that you've got around here, whether you'd want to go that way anyway, but that wouldn't preclude it from particularly a strengthened design to have a cycle lane in the future.
There has been consultation. I was involved in a presentation by Transit, Land Transport New Zealand, with a bunch of stakeholders, and there was a public meeting also held in Green Meadows, in which all of this was actually presented. I don't know whether those presentations will be done to Napier City and Hastings District, though.
We have a regular hui with all regional leaders every 6 weeks, and we have attended both Hastings and Napier City Councils on request for them as well.
Yeah, well, I do remember this committee wrote to NZTA and urged them to future-proof the design to be able to later incorporate other transport modes, and the message we got back was we can't, and we won't.
Yeah, because it was in that report, like the number of commuters, active transport for, like, for example, even just at the hospitals in Napier and Hastings, but Napier and Hastings are islands when you think about, the former button cars.
That wasn't, we weren't saying build it in now, but, do things in a way that you could, like you say, within the width, but simply with it, it's outside the direction of the GPS, so they couldn't. Very disappointing. But thank you, Linda, and again, like to see 76% of all of the cyclone recovery work done, 104 out of 140 damaged sites. That's a sign of the real commitment to this region, so thank you for sharing that. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, the 6 schools in the region to receive variable speed limits.
Yes.
I know Pukeha and Te Aute College are in there.
Gosh. So you want to know how?
No, it doesn't matter. We did have a discussion offline about what the schools were, but I didn't want to. I just wanted to because I knew that.
There are actually 7, so it's a good point of clarification. So we've got Kota Māori School, Pukehu, Te Aratika, Te Oti, Te Kuro Mangateriteri, Te Kuro Waikari Moana, and Wairoa College are the 7 on the state highway network. We did not tally up Wairoa College in that one because there were some infrastructure requirements.
Now, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that the speed limit only changes during the window of the drop-off and the pickup, right?
Again, it's super specific. In the rule that it's allowed to be, don't quote me, I think it was a half an hour or 45 minutes of either side of the opening, the main pickup and drop-off times. And we work with the schools to kind of clearly define that, and also as well where the variable speed limit starts and stops. Again, there's a maximum and minimum set in the rule that we're allowed to do that with. So there is some things to work through in Central Hawke's Bay because you've got 2 that are quite close together, but maybe not close together enough.
Thank you. I understand the constraints of the rule, but my personal view is that's the most wrong-headed, dumb policy decision that any government for transport's ever put in terms of school safety. That's just my personal view that I'm sharing there. And I hope time doesn't prove me right. Anyway, I didn't want to end on that dim note. I'll end on this cheery one with a slight tongue-in-cheek comment.
Okay.
There were 80-kilometre speed signs every 3 kilometres over 90 kilometres of State Highway 5 that are now redundant. Is there any chance of getting my hands on one of those? I'll leave that with you. Any other questions or comments? I imagine they must all be sitting in a shed somewhere.
They'd change the heads, wouldn't they? Or just a signage. Change the whole sign.
They'd be gone, wouldn't they?
They're going to put both here.
They'll be used somewhere else, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave that one with you, Linda. Yeah. Just as a, I guess, the way for me to reflect back on my time in this role. Anyway,
on your driveway.
any other questions or comments on the report? I didn't mean to be in any way dismiss the importance of that report, but okay. Well, I'd like to move that we receive that. Anyone second that? Councillor Butto, all in favour? Aye. Well, thanks to Linda. Carried. Now, we've got, just to finish with the advisory body, we've heard from Daniel, member updates. And anything you'd like to share with us, starting with you, Ian?
Well, I suppose from an industry point of view, we're very rapt that the Manawatu Gorge bypass is opening this next week. That's going to ease, or from a safety point of view, not so much from a timing and a cost point of view, will make a big difference to everyone, industry and public. The industry itself is probably running at I would say, generally at about 15 to 18% down in revenue across the country. Some of that export driven, but not necessarily all, but a lot of it.
You say 80?
18.
18, right.
A lot of it's just FMCG, and I think general public are probably more conservative in what they're buying. Some people have rationalised what they're moving. We expect that will rectify, but it's probably going to take 12 months, as I think the general economy will, to rectify. But apart from that, I think everything's ticking along reasonably well. I'd just like to make a couple of comments rather than criticisms on our submission from Mr. Wellwood. I have some doubt about the accuracy of some of the figures, both in the costings and in the debate about road versus rail. But I think it's a great opportunity that still needs pursuing. I think Nigel could possibly aid maybe at the TREC or a small subcommittee to evaluate what those costs are to resurrect the rail as such, because without that, we're not really going to be able to, accuracy in that, we wouldn't really be able to do too much more work on what the outcome could be. And I think the other key point they made here, which is very valid, is that if it was resurrected and the corridor open, I think it would be a fantastic idea to put commercial reality in and offer it to other stakeholders as a corridor. And I think the culture of that smaller stakeholder might actually drive more efficiency out of it than NZ Rail as such, that they're more focused on a very big picture.
Yeah, and that's very much their model, that the below wheel infrastructure would be separated. So,
yes.
What happens on that rail is like a road. It's up to the market to decide what they want to do on it.
And I think especially for logs and that sort of thing, the big commodity stuff, if you've got a lot of tranship, and obviously you can't get the wood straight from the forest, but if there was an efficient tranship point put in, I certainly think it's well worth evaluating, as long as it doesn't cost too much to resurrect the rail.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Craig?
Covered most of the things I've already sort of brought up. One thing, AA is intending to get involved in some more safety orientated projects, so I'm probably keen on taking back the road safety week thing back and see what we might be able to do there.
In terms of supporting it?
In possible terms of supporting it. And as I've said to Bryce, I'm also on the board of PGA as well, so.
That's a great suggestion, thank you. Thank you very much,
That's a possible avenue.
Craig? Yeah.
I guess I'd just like to briefly highlight some data that we've come across. Well, recently the Ministry of Health does an annual health survey about 7,000 New Zealanders, which was released many months ago, but the regional data has come, the district data has come through the last week. So I guess in terms of transport, a few interesting findings to point out. As the level of physical activity in Hawke's Bay has increased from 40% up to 55% in the last 5 years, or last 7 years as well. So that's more than 2.5 hours of exercise per week as well. But also just points out that half of people in Hawke's Bay are still not getting the required amount of physical activity. And if I could follow up physical activity in a pill, I would make billions. Like, it's just how important it is to overall health as well. So I guess thinking forward to our active transport plan about how we continue to improve it. It's slightly above the national average, which is great to see. I'm not quite sure why it's gone up, but it's good. But we'd like to get it further as well. Other things we've seen is looking at barriers to general practice care. One of the questions asked about is transport a factor, a barrier to get into general practice. We've seen that drop from 9% of people who find transport's a barrier to get to general practice, and the last, so over 10 years, it's reduced down to 3%, which is great again. Transport's there's only a small factor. Waiting times and cost are way bigger barriers as well. The other questions is about active transport to schools. We've got about 40% of children in Hawke's Bay using active transport to get to school as well, which is about level over the last 10 years or so, and even with about New Zealand as well. But again, would love to see those numbers get up as. We're working towards do some visuals on that, so we can have some graphs and some data people can look at as well. That's sort of just the informal result. Happy to present that. We'll pass that on when that's available.
Thank you very much, mate. That's some great research and some great data, some of which is quite encouraging. Did you want to?
Going to be my question. Can you share the research report?
There's no research report, so they basically dumped a large amount of provided a large amount of Excel spreadsheets with a lot of data. So it's like extremely technical, but I'm working with our intelligence team to make it into a nice, pretty graph essentially.
Excellent.
So once we get to that stage, that's much more available and easy to interpret. More than happy to.
That would be brilliant.
This one. So
thank you.
And finally, Api, anything from the Māori Committee perspective?
Really good info.
Perspective you'd like to share?
Not really, but just going over what we've been talking about today. For the future anyway, consideration to gold cards. It should be a 24/7 way to go. That's my belief. Cashless fares, was over in the Gold Coast a few months ago. Great, just using your EFTPOS card to travel by train. Tag on, tag off. Of course, the number 11, Napier to Hastings and vice versa via Clive. There should be some trials on that early morning and early afternoon, perhaps once a week before start. Summertime, especially during summertime. And I suppose when we talk about our disabled people and their use of the public transport, there needs to be a lot of talking. Our people here, through Bryce and Russell, talking to our bus company, also engaging with the union and the drivers, because over the years, I've seen that slight breakdown, that slight disconnect, and if we're talking about having a good bus transport system, there needs to be some engagement through the union and through our drivers. Very important. There needs to be ongoing education, because I've seen the problems that our council has had with the bus company because of our drivers in particular, and what their and how the union, the rules of the union and how the drivers connect to that, and of course it creates concerns for for us, the council, and for our community transport. So those are just a few things I just wanted to reiterate. It was, in regards to the submission that was brought up by our Māori members about our maraes and all that, we understand that. And at the end of the day, it's just in the too hard basket, I believe. I heard you guys talking about going through Oamahu and coming on that road back to EIT, and that's fine. And I think, if we can manage that in the future, and everything revolves around the finance, money, of course. And so good luck. Good luck to you, good luck to us. Kia ora.
Good, Happy, and just to close that out, that's why with that recommendation at the end to continue to liaise with the Tai Whenua about those issues, and the community transport lead and the community transport funding will be really important in terms of those types of objectives. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. Councillor Taylor?
I'd just like to add, not necessarily for today, for this meeting, but August and maybe going forward, as well as our advisory members, I'd quite like for the councils to get a chance for general discussion as well, or general presentations on what everybody's up to. It's one thing that's, I think, is missing from this process.
That's a good idea.
In terms of what we're all up to. We could get ideas from each other, or we could just update so we're neighbours. So just wanted to bring that up for future.
Because otherwise you're really just commenting on the agenda items that get presented as opposed to bringing your district to the table.
Yes.
Is what's hot. Top of mind.
Away you go.
Well, I can talk now if you want me to.
Well, yeah. Okay. Did you have your hand up, Linda?
Yeah, just in comment to that, that's generally standard practice at the other RCAs, that because you're also spending National Land Transport funds in your region as well, that you provide a similar update.
I think
most of them are written, but verbal as well. They usually will take questions. So it's how you wish to do it.
To the next meeting.
Yeah. Usually
I'll give you a couple of minutes now if you want, but.
Oh, and I just, it's little things like we've just had the bespoke phar that Linda mentioned earlier. A big thing that CHB's just done is got permission for a 10-year maintenance contract, which is huge for us. It's a $100 million contract, and getting the approval for that and working through, we're going into the process of procurement. We've just approved the procurement plan for that, and so that's pretty huge for us. So that's something that we want, like to talk about. But it's just in general the recovery work, everything like that. It's it's just nice to. I had a wee thingy up in front of me, so we've got. We had $150 million worth of damage, not as much as our neighbours, of which $45 million of repairs have complete, and we've got $29 million of repairs underway. Wow. And for a district as small as Central Hawke's Bay, I think that's vital to talk about. And there's a few other bits and pieces that I won't bring up today. I'll save for next time. But I just wanted to be able to tell what we were up to as well.
Great suggestion, and I think that's in the do category. In other words, why didn't we think of it sooner? Thank you for bringing that to the table. I'm going to ask Api if you could close us and send us off.
I was going to ask you, would you like to do it?
Okay. All right. Does everyone have the app?
Yeah.
I'm going to. You might actually have this one here. Why don't we do that one? What's the matter?
I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I was wondering whether you were wanting to talk about an additional recommendation about a submission to the parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you for letting that go, Katrina.
Just briefly, as I mentioned before, there is a parliamentary inquiry into ports and maritime. I think it would be incredibly useful for the RTC to make a submission. They are due by the 13th of July. The team can draft a submission for circulation to you as the Regional Transport Committee, focusing on, I would suggest, the Lower North Island freight strategy and also the Hawke's Bay freight strategy that we already have in place, the importance of Napier's port for our economic resilience of this region and the connectivity of that with the Lower North Island. That's it.
how about that for the approval of the chair?
Yes.
So the recommendation is that the committee delegates the TAG preparation of submission to the inquiry into the ports and maritime sector for the chair's signature and lodgement by 13 July. So thank you, Councillor Taylor. Would you second that, Councillor Barrow? All in favour?
Aye.
Aye, right. Well, you've got the closing karakia in front of you. And ka inoi tātou. Kia tau ngā manaakitanga a te mea ngaro. Ki runga ki tēnā o tātou. Kia māhia te hua, mā kihikihi. Kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reo Māori. Kia tūturu, ka whakamaua, kia tīna, tīna, hui e, tai ki. All safe. See you all in a couple of months. Thank you for being here and your contribution. And go public transport.